Our world is changing, from the pandemic to social unrest to wars, division, and climate change. It's time to envision a new way of living in and surviving the shift of ages. The Hopi call this the time of the Great Purification and talk about different worlds. Their petroglyphs and the other petroglyphs around the world tell the story of what happens during the shift, the geomagnetic pole shift. Learn what the indigenous peoples of the world, scientists, researchers, prophets, psychics, remote viewers, and more say about what our Earth may experience in most of our lifetimes. Learn what we can do to prepare for what might be coming in a matter of decades. Are you brave enough to envision a new Earth? Welcome, everyone, to another Envisioning a New Earth show with your host, Joan Serio. Today, I have Dr. Paul LaViolette, and Dr. LaViolette holds a bachelor's in physics from Johns Hopkins University, an MBA in organizational administration from the University of Chicago, and a PhD in systems science from Portland State University. Dr. LaViolette has been president of the Starburst Foundation since 1984, where he has been conducting interdisciplinary research in physics, astronomy, geology, cosmochemistry, paleoclimatology, systems theory, and cognitive psychology. He has served as a solar energy consultant for the UN and Greek government, and has also consulted with Hughes Aircraft Corporation on ways to improve company innovation. His research at Harvard School of Public Health led him to invent an improved pulsation dampener for air sampling pumps, as well as a new type of life support rebreather apparatus for which he received a patent. He has served as a solar energy consultant for the UN and Greek government and has conducted solar water desalination research for the state of California. He is the author of the books Secret of Anti-Gravity Pulsation, Genesis of the Cosmos, Subquantum Kinetics, Earth Under Fire, and Decoding the Message of the Pulsars. Dr. LaViolette is the originator of subquantum kinetics, continuous creation cosmology that effectively replaces the Big Bang theory, the Galactic Superwave Theory, which proposes that cosmic ray outbursts from the center of our galaxy periodically trigger major shifts in the Earth's climate, and many others. His websites are starburstfound.org and etheric.com. Welcome to the show, Dr. LaViolette. I am so happy to have you here today.
Glad to be here.
So we're going to talk about your galactic superwave theory today. And I know that you have a presentation about that. So if you would like to start that.
Well, first, since Halloween is coming up, to talk about the significance of Halloween, because I discuss it in my book. This is my book, Earth Under Fire, which is discussing the superwave theory. And it's based on my dissertation. I did my PhD work on this galactic superwave theory. Spent 4 years researching because it covered all sorts of fields of science. It was very interdisciplinary, so not just astronomy and physics, but also cosmochemistry, geology, paleontology, so on. And also there was a lot of work in the area of myth, because that's how I initially got the idea. But that's not in the dissertation itself. It's in this book. It describes the journey I took to make this discovery. My dissertation is based totally on scientific evidence and confirming the hypothesis. How you get the hypothesis is another question, you know. Wanted to say about Halloween, it's a Druid holiday. here in the book where I was discussing the Pleiades. Says that the Pleiades are associated with festivals such as the Druids' All Hallows Eve, Halloween, in other words, All Saints' Day, the Feast of the Lamps among the Hindus, and the Feast of the Lanterns among the Japanese. These holidays, generally observed close to the last day of October, honor the people who died in a catastrophe that occurred in ancient times, and which is described in the biblical story of the deluge. And this is from various, I had two references, they're very reputable references in star myths and traditions where I got that. I'm not making that up. That's from scholars who have researched this.
That's
And a lot of
interesting.
people aren't aware of this significance. So you have All Saints' Day is on November 1st, and that's you could call it the hallowed day, the sacred day, in remembrance of the people who died in the past. And then you have Halloween, All Hallows Eve, meaning Eve. And it's sort of basically depicting the circumstances of what they were going through. And so we're sort of reenacting what happened to human civilization maybe 10,000 years ago or more, where people were displaced from their homes. They didn't have food, and they were going from house to house to see if anybody had food. And that's the treat, they're seeking. And trick, maybe if they didn't get anything, they might break in or something, who knows, they were pretty desperate. And then the witches and the broomsticks flying through the air and the apparitions of hobgoblins and so on could represent what they were seeing in the sky, because you had these the sky didn't look like you see today. It was very strange, with illuminated dust in the heavens and so on. So maybe keep in mind that just a few more days when it's happening.
Pretty timely that we're talking about this now.
Yes. So I can show some pictures to accompany what I'm saying to give an idea, unless you had any particular question in the beginning.
No, I think I have plenty of questions, but you'll probably answer a lot of them. And if you don't, I'll ask them as we go along. Okay.
So I can share screen here. Let's see. And you see my screen?
That I do.
And so I can still point here. That's
Yes.
the book I just showed you. And it's published in 2005. It's available on my website, etheric.com. I think I have, here it is. My website, Sphinx Stargate, etheric.com. And also my other websites, starburstfound.org. So both of these have all sorts of information about the superwave theory. That's free downloads of papers if you're interested. And also on etheric.com, the books are for sale there, like Earth Under Fire and a few other books I've done. It seems to have jumped there. So let me see.
It went to the page.
Out of the for some reason I jumped out of the okay. Let me get the thing back here. Where was it? Books. Okay. I have to be careful about these links. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, this is my dissertation. I put it on a CD, PDFs, along with a lot of other files. It's also available. So This is a quote from Oral Scott, is one of the sources of what I just read to you from my book about Halloween. It's been suggested perhaps a patriarch of the ancient world wishing to preserve for posterity an imperishable record of some great event or crisis chose this means of doing so, and by his arrangement of the star groups wrote into the sky a message that would endure forever. So that's something that's been handed down by word of mouth. And in fact, it's true. I found it to be true because the clues were there, and I sort of reverse engineered them, or I interpreted them. And so my journey of discovering the superwave phenomena actually began with discovering that there was a time capsule message written in the stars. And it was a very sophisticated message. I mean, it would have, you know, like Carl Sagan and Frank Drake made a time capsule message, which they sent out on Pioneer 10 spacecraft. And these people thousands of years ago used similar techniques with the key and check mechanism. So they were very sophisticated. I mean, these people were at scientific level compared to our own, I figure.
Yes.
They were trying to communicate a message with symbols and myths that could be handed down, and because they knew people might not be able to understand the science, or wouldn't survive intact. People would make changes along the way, whereas a myth would be handed down faithfully, more or less. So one of the myths is of Sagittarius shooting his arrow at the heart of the scorpion. And that's an ancient Greek myth.
Galactic center.
And it's interesting. This is what caught my attention. I thought, well, let me see, where is this arrow going?
Yep.
And here's Sagittarius down here and Scorpius here. This is plotted on galactic coordinates, which is a little better representation of the actual shape of the constellations in the sky. Here's the galactic center. So you see that both of these are like pointing at something, you know, if you put the symbols, it's like, what the heck is here? You know, there's not many arrows in the constellations. There's these, and then there's the Sagitta arrow, which is exactly 1 radian from the galactic center, which 1 radian, it's a geometrical concept. It's the idea that if the radius from the galactic center to the Earth is measured out there. So here's an arrow that's coming to the Earth, you know, and indicating something could have impacted us at that time. Now, present day orientation of the arrow here, this is the arrow currently, it's aimed at this direction, it's not going through the heart. So the idea I had was to reverse the reverse the constellation back to when it was hitting Antares, which is the heart of the scorpion. And it turns out this star is the fastest moving star in Sagittarius, which is interesting. That it's almost like they intended this to be a chronometer here. And this way I was able to pinpoint the exact date, 15,860 years ago, that there was something significant at that time. Now you see how close it comes to the galactic center.
Yes.
And here was Shapley's estimate with Mount Palomar telescope. He had come this close with optical methods. And we only found the location better using radio telescopes and X-ray telescopes in recent times, and just in the last 40, 50 years. So here the ancients were far superior to where we were 100 years ago in terms of it. So you might wonder, well, could it be that they saw the galactic center illuminated, and that's how they know the location? Because today it's hidden behind a lot of dust in the center of the galaxy. And it's the center is quiescent, so you don't see it very bright. But maybe these people were writing the message or had recorded its position at the time when it was active.
Right.
And here's another picture, actual photo of the galactic center region. Here's me writing my dissertation back in 82 or so. finished in '83. Took 4 years of research leading up to that. And then I published this paper in 87 about the theory. It's a referee journal, Earth, Moon, and Planets it's called. So if you figure types of catastrophes, cosmic catastrophes that could happen to the planet, I put galactic superwave at the top because it's the most frequent event that would seriously affect the planet. Also large magnitude solar flare, but usually these can be connected. And comet or asteroid impact, like you had for the dinosaurs. Then there's possibility a dense interstellar cloud might pass through the solar system and cause problems, or a nearby supernova event. Now, all these things are much less of a problem globally. I mean, we had a comet hit the Earth 1908, the Tunguska event. But that was local pretty much to Siberia. We have solar flares on their own, like the Carrington event.
1859.
Yeah.
What about the nearby supernova explosion? Could that be from our sun itself? Could that cause a
no supernova? You're talking about stars outside the solar system.
Okay.
So, and the nearest one that happened recently, they recorded it, was in the Large Magellanic Cloud, which is within our area of our galaxy. Ones that have occurred in our galaxy, you have to go back like at least 900 years to the Crab explosion, supernova explosion. And that was one of the closest, that second closest to Earth, actually. And we'll talk about that. So about 1 in 6 spiral galaxies have, as we see when we view them, have cores that are luminous. They're in an active state, energy releasing state. In other words, the core always releases energy, but at certain times it jumps sort of into an active state. It's sort of like so quick, it occurs like a supernova explosion would, but instead of exploding, it just jumps up in activity. And when that happens, the galaxy will appear as a Seyfert galaxy or an N galaxy. These are various classifications. Another is a quasar, can appear as a quasar. So here's an example of a Seyfert galaxy. You see how the core is very bright. Through the galactic core. Now, we had an opportunity in 2011 where we caught a galaxy where its core had an outburst. And first they thought it was a gamma ray flash. They expected it to be over in a few seconds, and it wasn't. It continued. And I realized when I read this paper that they happened to catch by chance the core going into the active state. And it's very interesting. You see that the levels were very high initially. That's why they say if something like this happens, try to stay indoors for the first 3 days at least, because that could be the worst. It comes down about 50-fold. Then they had another burst, but then it came down. So that brings you to about 1 or 2 weeks out. It's much lower, like two orders of magnitude lower.
And the reason we'd have to stay inside is because of the electromagnetic radiation?
Yeah, cosmic rays, gamma rays, more of the cosmic ray would be a problem. But of course, the hard cosmic ray events, cosmic ray particles like protons, for example, would penetrate even through your house. But at least the electron part, because they can produce an electron cascade in the atmosphere. So one particle could produce thousands of cosmic rays. Those would be able to be stopped by your house roof, most of them. So you'd be at least protecting yourself from that component. I mean, to really get away from such a thing, you have to go in a cave. If you want your radiation, those two, you might have a radiation encounter and see how bad it is. And of course, it wouldn't necessarily be all day. Hopefully, I mean, we haven't been through one of these in modern times, but you could imagine as the Earth turns, that the direction of the galactic core would set in the sky, and then the cosmic ray levels would drop, hopefully, but you'd still have the magnetic field would be bringing these in from all directions still, but you might have less of the real energetic ones coming to you when it's for at least half a day anyway. The whole thing gets pretty depressing when you get into what could happen. We're fortunate not to have had a really intense one for the last 5,300 years. And that one at 5,300 years ago was more of the, I call it level 2, magnitude 2. But the more intense ones were during the Ice Age. So here, when you look in with X-rays or radio images, you see the center of the galaxy. And, not a black hole, it's what I call a mother star. The black hole idea has been disproved, in my opinion. It's not possible for a black hole even to form. These are new ideas that you won't get through mainstream media or through the universities. They're teaching baloney.
Right.
You'll find out. So here's an X-ray image. And on my website, I talk about the closest mother star to us is the one in our own galaxy, the Sagittarius A star. And it's about this size of this blue dot here. It's about a quarter of the diameter of Mercury's orbit. If you can figure, about 21 times the diameter of the sun. This is an estimate, just an estimate. Now, this white area is where they have measured with the ALMA project, measured microwaves coming out from that area, or far infrared microwave emission coming from the galactic center. And it turns out that the area is within this black hole event horizon, which, if it was a black hole, this should all be black. And it's not. They see this energy's radiating out. So, there's a disproof of the black hole theory. And the way the scientists tried to get around that, they said, oh, well, this is on the outside of the event horizon. It just happens to be facing us, you see. Think of a sphere here, and this is just on the surface, sphere facing us. But the problem with that is, well, all the material in this region is rotating at quite a high velocity. It should have, even with a year of observation, they should have seen this move, and it's dead on, stays there. So this, with their own observations, they have disproved the black hole theory with the closest one that we can observe, which is our galactic center. There was a US group that claimed, they made a big fuss about, they were going to observe and announce the results, and then they never announced them. And I figure maybe because the results didn't turn out the way they wanted them to. So it's kind of embarrassment for that group. So here's the characteristics. The mother star has a density about 600 times that of the sun. Its mass, well, it's about 4 million solar masses. And it's about 2.5 billion times the luminosity of the sun currently. and so on. And it's also creating matter inside. So this is based on the continuous creation theory that I've proposed. It's written up in my book, Subquantum Kinetics. And there's all sorts of support that actually that's what's happening in our galaxy. I just finished publishing 2 papers that disprove the Big Bang Theory and show that it's better explained by continuous creation. And all this is more detailed, not only in the papers, but in my book, Subquantum Kinetics. So the center of our galaxy is also a matter creation site. In fact, about 99% of the matter in our galaxy came out of the center of the galaxy, was expelled. So you get matter being created in all the stars too, inside the sun, inside the earth, in fact, to some extent. But the greatest creation rate is at the center. So in one way, you can say it's good that we have the core there. We wouldn't be around. We wouldn't have all the stars here if the core hadn't been generating all this matter and expelling it. Now, when a thing explodes, it will jump in activity. This is based in radioluminosity. It will go up about, in this one case I was giving as a model for my thesis, was about 300,000 times increase.
Wow.
And that radiation will travel out as a wave, right, sort of radially out from the black matter. So think of a shell expanding outward. And as the particles travel radially outward, they interact with magnetic fields they encounter, and they produce synchrotron radiation, which is a bluish white light discovered here in my hometown, Schenectady, in the GE synchrotron. They found this bluish light coming from their particle accelerator. That's how it got its name. And now it's used in astronomy for anytime they observe a certain type of bluish white light that's broad spectrum radiation, and they realize it's being created by cosmic rays. And in this case, because the cosmic rays are going so fast, it will be beamed in the forward direction. So that's like these little searchlights will be beaming this radiation out towards us. Here's from the movie Earth Under Fire, the documentary. This is what sort of a depiction of what it would look like.
From Earth, that's what it would look like.
Well, that's a representation more from close to it.
Close to it, okay.
What it would look like, the whole idea of the expanding horizon. Here's the video, Earth Under Fire, and it's you can see it on Gaia TV. It's one of their selections. Excellent video. It was made back in 98, 97, 98. And it's very, very good depiction. Now, I presented my theory back in 83. I got my PhD in 83, and it was published in 87. And of course, didn't get much response from the astronomical community. Nobody asked me to come on TV or to interview me. All my interviews have been with people like you who are sort of in the alternative field. Now, 2015, this is how many years, almost 30 years later, they find that they observe, now we got new satellites up there so we can do more in observation more recently. And they start looking at these galaxies that are active, and they find, sure enough, just like I said, that the cosmic rays that are being emitted, they're going in all directions, not just to the poles, because before they said, okay, if these explode, they just go from the poles. But no, here's an example. They're going in all directions.
Wow.
Now, when they get the proper equipment up there to see what's going on. And the other thing is that it's creating this wind that's moving like 30% the speed of light, radially outward in this one particular galaxy. So you see, there was this, at the time I proposed a theory, everyone was sort of the view, well, you know, if anything happened in the galactic center, even if it exploded, it would be like all contained by the magnetic fields, you know, sort of their Linus blanket, sort of everything is safe. But that's not the case. The cosmic rays overpower the magnetic field and they come straight outward. So I was the first to propose the idea of long-range cosmic ray propagation through the entire galaxy due to an event like this. And now it's confirmed. But of course, this is the way it works in science. You never get the credit, even though you were the first to propose it. You know? And then there was another study done in 2020, and again, similar results. They found outflow of ionized gas traveling as fast as 7% the speed of light.
Now, is this ionized gas part of that galactic superwave that would?
Yeah, it's gas in the vicinity of the galactic center and in the disk that is ionized by the cosmic rays, and it gets propelled outward. And in fact, they found it was accelerating as they observed it over a 5-year period. It started picking up speed, so it was almost like that whatever was causing it to move was keeping it going faster and faster. You know, so in this one case, they found it as far out as 9,800 light years. But in fact, if in my dissertation, I give the evidence showing all different galaxies, how the evidence is it goes through the entire galaxy and on outward. So we're not really safe from these events. Now, here's a view looking down onto the galactic plane. See, I thought I had a better picture, but okay. So we're at the center there where it says E here. And then this is the galactic center. So if you figure the cosmic rays are coming out of the speed of light, and let's say they're interacting with the medium or whatever and creating radio waves. Now those radio waves will come back to us, that we'll see them at the speed of light also. So since these are both at the speed of light, they form an ellipse. You can trace out an ellipse of, this is what we call the event horizon of the event. It's what you are able to see, because it doesn't, we're 23,000 light years from the galactic center. So stuff doesn't come to us immediately. It takes 23,000 light years to get to us, but we can look at past events, and the one that happened in the past, we would expect it to be on this horizon, some sort of horizon like this. This is actually a prolate ellipsoid, think of it in 3D, but most of it is in the plane of the galactic plane. So what I did, I plotted an event horizon for between 14,000 BC and 10,500 BC, which was during a time when there was one of these. It's indicated by the message, the zodiac message, indicated around 16,000 years ago. It was the beginning of an event. And you see that all the recent supernova line up. They're in this event, as if this thing triggered the supernova. So maybe because there's a gravity wave associated with it, this is one of the predictions, that there'll be a gravity wave pulse that slightly precedes the cosmic ray pulse, and it will maybe by a day or two. And that could easily have triggered certain of these stars to go supernova. And so here's another map looking down onto the galactic plane like the other one I showed. So if we're here, and here's the center of the galaxy, looking down, and we'll look just in our immediate vicinity, this is what you see. Here's the Earth, and here's the Crab supernova that was one of the supernova on that horizon that you saw here. You see a crab here.
Uh-huh.
And the other one that is on that map is right here. You don't see it because it wasn't, this one occurred it occurred when the superwave was passing us, actually. And it's not in the last 1,000 years, whereas this has happened in the last 1,000 years. So if you plot this and you look at the time of when they had occurred and how long it would take for the light to come to us to see the event, it turns out that they were triggered by the superwave. So first this one was triggered, and as the superwave went, and another 5,800 or 6,000 years later, it triggered this one. And then the light takes another 6,000 light years to come back to us. So, so we're looking at something that actually passed us, an event that passed us about 12, 13,000 years ago. And it's interesting, the constellations sort of show this. Here's Taurus. Taurus, I discuss it in Earth Under Fire. In my opinion, it's symbolizing the superwave. It's the charging, the cosmic bolt charging through the sky.
Interesting.
And it turns out the Crab Nebula that was triggered is right on the horns of the bull. In fact, that's where the superwave horizon is currently. And it makes you wonder, you know, was Crab supernova triggered by intelligence in the galaxy for the purpose of warning us?
Interesting.
Because it's just the position of it between the horns, you know, it's almost like they're trying to complete the message to us. And here you have Orion, he's
with
like
the shield.
defending with the shield to defend it against the superwave. And he's also pointing out the galactic anti-center, which is where the superwave, all these cosmic rays are headed towards the anti-center in our direction, in our area of the galaxy, from the galaxy center to the anti-center direction. So all these things are pointed out. And the other interesting thing, the Crab Nebula, if you look at it, the shape is a prolate ellipsoid, just like the event horizon. In fact, the ellipticity, the ratio of the long dimension to the short dimension, is the same as that event horizon. So here's a map. In fact, that they arranged it so the explosion occurred exactly perpendicular to our line of sight. So this is almost exactly perpendicular, this direction of explosion, the axis here. And so it's like they're creating a map for us.
Who is they?
They, well, I don't know if we'll have time to get into that, but that gets into my other book. It's called Decoding the Message of the Pulsars. I don't know if you can see this. We'll see it later, maybe if we have time. But it talks about a message that's created by, I can only say Galactic Federation, because it's orchestrated over many areas of the galaxy. So there had to be some participation of many civilizations in different parts of the galaxy to do this. And it's unmistakably an artificial creation of these pulsar signals. It's not a natural phenomenon like the physicists have been saying.
So they're warning us by doing this.
In fact, there is a message in there, just like the star lore message, that's warning us about the last event that happened. And in fact, that is a typical subject that you would use for extraterrestrial communication. You would want to have a topic that everyone in the galaxy would be familiar with or could check out. And that's this event affects all the star systems in the galaxy. It's something that they all deal with, you know, and it may be what separates the men from the boys, so to speak, in terms of advancement of civilizations? Are we able to understand this from our past and prepare for it? And if not, we end up going back to the Stone Age.
Right.
So, and then they come to rescue us, maybe, as out of the kindness of their hearts,
Right, yeah.
And they say, well, you didn't make it this time, maybe next time, But anyway, so if you look at the galaxy, there's what's called the non-thermal radio background radiation. This is radio emissions from the galaxy, and it's coming from all directions, but it's more concentrated towards the center of the galaxy. And they all agree that this is due to cosmic rays, but they didn't realize it was due to the superwave. And that's what I showed in my dissertation. And if you plot how it would be if it was produced by the superwave, here's the prediction of the superwave. See how?
Oh, yeah. So it correlates. Yeah.
And this was the best alternative theory that we had.
Yeah. No.
And also, there's this gamma ray emission background that is being created by this past event, the one that you saw the horizon there. And it's a lot of it is at high latitudes, like away from the galactic plane, but mostly concentrated towards the galactic plane. But this part, they can't understand how it would be created because there's no stars up there to create the gamma ray emission. And then you may have heard of the gamma ray bubbles that were, NASA talked about this about 10 years ago or so, 15 years ago, which is really a photoshopped thing. Because you do have gamma rays out here. This is just where they're enhanced in this area. And it looks like a polar emission to the poles of the galaxy.
Yeah,
here's the way it really looks, And
it's a dipole, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's understandable because you do have magnetic fields that impede.
Right.
But here you get more free passage right straight from the poles. And that could create that effect. And based on the extent of it, you can figure this may have occurred about an outburst about 40,000 years ago if this was traveling at the speed of light. And that's when we had one of the biggest outbursts. That's the one that killed off the Neanderthals. We'll talk about that shortly. So what are the effects? You have gravity wave effects like earthquakes, polar axis jerk. The cosmic rays would elevate the background radiation, and that could cause an increase in genetic mutation. So try to stay indoors for at least the first 3 days and seek shelter whenever you can. It could partially destroy the ozone layer, which would cause increased solar UV radiation. So you need skin protection or stay out of the sun.
Yeah.
Then the EMP would destroy the satellite communication system we have. The internet would go down.
The electromagnetic pulse, for those that don't know.
Yeah, would
EMP
be an
is,
electromagnetic pulse when this blast of cosmic rays hits the atmosphere. It'd be like a high altitude nuclear explosion. So you might need shortwave radios to communicate. They might still work. Power lines would develop voltage surges similar to a solar flare event. And if the sun was involved, that would also be an effect that would cause.
Will we still have power? Will we still have the grid system?
No, you wouldn't have power. Maybe for 10 years until
fried, wouldn't it?
They'd have to replace the transformers.
Right, yeah.
This is what they're saying. This is all comes out of what had happened with the Carrington event. They figured it would take 10 years to replace the transformers. That is, if society was still functioning. What if it wasn't?
Right. I mean, how do you produce the transformers?
Do all these car companies have replacement transformers handy to put in an event like this? No, they're not prepared for anything like this.
No.
So you'd have a temporary climatic cooling event because the cosmic rays they ionize the atmosphere, and that dims the sunlight. It creates nuclei to form clouds. So you'd have clouds just formed in the atmosphere from this.
And then temperature decreases. Do we go into a nuclear winter?
I don't know if it would be initially that severe. It would be a cooling for
Uh-huh.
sure, due to
Okay.
cloud cover. And I don't know how dark it could get from this, how much obscuration there'd be,
Mhm, mhm.
whether even you'd have at that time be able to see the heavens any longer. Would you be able to see the
Wow.
stars? I'm not
Right.
sure. If you could, it would be quite a light show that you'd be seeing out there. I'll get that. So nebula formation. Yeah, it could bring cosmic dust into the solar system because it's sort of pushing, because the cosmic dust is kept out of the solar system by the solar wind. But now when you have a galactic wind, basically, from the superwave, counteracting that, it's going to push the cosmic dust in. And that will create all sorts of weird cloud shapes in the night sky. Maybe that's where some of this Halloween stuff comes from. You know, it'd be very strange looking to look up in the heavens. If it was a big event, if it was a major superwave that lasted long enough, because it takes several months for this stuff to come in. So it would, the cosmic ray, the galactic superwave event would have to sustain itself for at least several months for this to go to this next phase where this dust comes in. It surrounds the sun, causes a change of the solar spectrum. I've studied all this. It's also in my book, Earth Under Fire. How it would affect climate then, because it would change the spectrum towards the infrared, and you get more solar energy would be absorbed at the poles, and yet it would be darker at the same time. So you get inversion effects. You could have ice storms, sort of accelerated snowfall, blizzards, snow blizzards. And that could initiate an ice age.
Yeah.
And the same effect could terminate an ice age, because if you had warming at the poles, that's where you would have had the ice sheets,
Right.
great melting of the ice sheets. So you get a cocoon around the sun formed, creating more solar infrared. You have what's called the interplanetary hothouse effect, because the dust in the solar system would sort of keep the solar radiation from going out. It sort of reflect it back on the Earth. And that effect too. So you're getting, and they say that to have an ice age, you need actually input of heat. It's not enough to have cooling. You need, because that water has to be evaporated to create, get in the atmosphere.
The cooling, right. What would the cocoon around the sun look like to us?
Well, actually, we see a cocoon around the sun. It's just not, we can't see it with your eyes. Astronomers report it. It's a slight dust cocoon there.
Would the sun look different to us during this event?
Yeah. Well, it would look reddish. So everything would be reddened and go to the, also the infrared would be enhanced. Then the other thing is the dust would aggravate the sun, because it would, it's sort of like, because the radiation can't get out and this cocoon is, besides the hothouse effect, the cocoon also, it's reflecting light back into the sun. So the sun's temperature goes up in the chromosphere, and that will aggravate more flaring. And also material falling onto the sun will aggravate the sun. And it would turn into what you call a T-Tauri star. T-Tauri star looks just like our sun, but it's got a dust cocoon around it. And it's, what they see is the star is flaring continually, and it's putting out a lot of cosmic rays and so on, a lot of UV. So you'd have killer solar flares, arriving, possibility of mass extinctions like we had at the end of the Ice Age. You could have rapid melting of continental ice sheets during the Ice Age, at a time when ice was already there, covering the continents. That would cause melting of the ice on the surface, producing ponding, and that could come down like an avalanche of water then.
Right.
One lake triggering the next, forming this, what I call a continental glacier wave, which could reshape the surface of the earth, like the Grand Canyon, for example.
Which has already happened. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So here's a record of cosmic ray events prior to our time. It goes back 150,000 years. And this is based on a study of the ice core record, looking at beryllium-10. And this particular one comes from Antarctica, from the Vostok core. Beryllium-10 is produced in the atmosphere by cosmic rays. And because it decays, it's not a natural occurring element in the Earth. It will decay after a while. But it decays slow enough that they can see it in the record. It takes 500,000 years to decay. But wherever you see peaks in the ice record, that would indicate a cosmic ray peak. And this is about where you would expect for the cosmic ray background. And so you see these times when it exceeded the background radiation levels we had. And so you see the frequency of these recurrences. If you study the periodicity of this, that you find cycles around 28,500 plus or minus, 3,000 years. So that's around the time, that's about the Earth's great cycle of the polar axis, 26,000 something years. So if you look at the plus or minus, it embraces that. Then the 11,500 year cycle would be about half of that cycle. And then you have a 5,700 year cycle, plus or minus 500 years, which is very close to the Mayan cycle. Mayan cycle around 5,300 or so years. And we did have a minor superwave occurred at 3,300 BC, so 5,300, so one Mayan cycle ago. And that's when the Mayan calendar began, actually.
Interesting.
Interesting. So, here's the Mayan cycle, 5126 years. And it began, the calendar began 3,114. So just after this event subsided, this one at 3,300 BC, give a few hundred years for things to get back to normal, that's when they began the calendar. So you can see it here. That's this little spike here. This is the last 10,000 years. And this is the one that killed the Neanderthal, one of the biggest we've had.
Is there any regular periodicity to these galactic superwaves?
Well, those would be the periodicities, like what I just said. These.
All right. So about there's, it seems like it could happen at any time between 11,000, like 11,500, either another 11,000 or another 5,000 less than that. I mean, where are we in that range?
Yeah, we're ready. Like I've said in my book, we're 90% chance in the next 400 years. And then there's the prophecy of Peter Dunhoff, who says in 2029, we'll have an event.
Well, I've got other people that Douglas Vogt, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's studied stuff. He comes up with a clock theory, and every 12,068 years, we go through this nova, the sun novas, and he's predicting towards the end of 2046. And then I had Stefan Schwartz on, who has remote viewers, and they said they saw an Earth cataclysm between 2040 and 2045, which kind of correlates to his theory. So we're getting close. I mean,
I'm
this is very
interested in that
close
because
now.
I've used remote viewers myself. Starburst Foundation was founded, one of the principles was to research super waves and warn people and try to anticipate when the next one would come. And we have used remote viewers. So I'd be interested in any information on that other people have come up with.
Yeah. I'm going to have him back on the show, but he's still correlating the information, all the documentation that he's got. He's got thousands of pages to go through about that time frame.
So these are the magnitude levels I talked a little about. So the Neanderthal event was magnitude 4 here. The 5,300 year event would have been magnitude 2. And there were a lot of others since the magnitude 3 event. Short duration could have been like for a day or 1 year at the most, not even. And those have been magnitude 1. And this is the event that's recorded in zodiac lore. So here's a picture of how the cosmic dust would come around the Earth. This is my measurements I did of iridium. I tested my theory to look for a presence of cosmic dust in the polar ice. And I found that the samples I picked from the Ice Age had very high levels. They were up to 100 times more, 1,000 times more than we have currently. And here I am with the gamma ray counter. This was one of the main tests of my superwave theory. And there have been other predictions that have been confirmed. There's a total of about 13 predictions that have been confirmed. So it's very well established theory now. These are interstellar dust particles that I found in one of the samples. They're mainly tin with a little lead. And for a long time, I couldn't figure out how could so much tin and lead end up in the ice core record, because usually cosmic dust particles don't have so much tin and lead. It's a agglomeration of different elements.
Yeah.
And finally, I realized that tin and lead in the metallic state, which they would be in space, because it would be a reducing environment with hydrogen, would burn off any oxygen that they would have had. These would have been superconducting particles. And superconducting particles can get swept up by magnetic fields that are passing through space, and it can concentrate them. So this may have come into the solar system as a body that was very concentrated with this stuff. It was one of the bigger events of dust entering the solar system. It was dated from around 50,000 years ago, about the time of the Barringer crater down there, Arizona. This is what a T-Tauri star might look like. And then you'd have, they found from studying moon rocks that Herbert Zook found increased solar activity about 16,000 years ago was 50 times greater than today. So there's confirmation of one of the predictions. And in fact, the megafauna, they had the extinction around, close to 13,000. It was about 12,900 or so, 12,887 years ago. And I found that it was due to a solar event. And this was the biggest disappearance of species since the dinosaurs that occurred at that time. You see how it skyrocketed at that time.
Yeah.
And here is this, we'll go show that. So this was the time when it occurred, and this is showing radiocarbon access. So the sun was quite active during this time, and it was very active, creating a lot of radiocarbon in the atmosphere this time. And at the same time causing a cooling. So this is why cosmic rays, whether they come from the sun or from the galactic center, they will cause climatic cooling. This is the younger Dryas. And this explains why the younger Dryas began. Why was there this cooling? This was a big mystery. And this is my explanation. I'm the first to propose this connection with the sun. And I studied the record and found a big event right here. I saw, right, 12,887 years before present. You found also events here and here, outbursts. And it turns out these are, the time between these are multiples of the solar cycle. So that's like a fingerprint there that this was solar induced. And this is the big event right here that I found. This is a acidity spike, because when cosmic rays hit the atmosphere from the sun, they will ionize, create like nitric oxide and so on, which will make the ice acidic. That was the biggest event in the whole Younger Dryas period that occurred at that time. So I suggest that the solar event that it killed the megafauna, it was much larger than the Carrington event. Sort of a comparison. They find even a carbonized layer correlating with that time.
Oh, yeah.
And then you would have also gotten flooding, because it would have created a warming of the climate, melting of the ice sheets, and creating this glacier wave effect. And that explains the freezing of the Ice Age mammoths in Alaska and Siberia, because they would be buried in ice cold water with ice, not only cold water, but with ice chunks in it, sort of preserving the carcasses and at the same time covering them with sediment. So it fits exactly the scenario that they find. So what they're looking up there, they're seeing the aftermath of a glacier wave. Here's a glacier extent during the Ice Age. Here's Alaska. You had, this indicates vegetation up in this region. Alaska and Siberia is full of pine trees and so on. And mammoths were living up here. And they were suddenly overwhelmed with these waves coming from the ice sheet. And a lot came down this way. Here's the glacier wave theory I have, sort of an avalanche theory. And so you get these canyons formed in the US. This is in Eastern Washington. Here's the Columbia Gorge. All this, if you can imagine, water brimming up to this point.
Right.
Just surging down the Grand Canyon. I visited Grand Canyon a few years ago, and the explanation they give is it was cut by the Colorado River, but they can't understand how could the Colorado River cut this, because the land is sloped up in the direction. So how could the Colorado River flow upward to cut the canyon? Well, what happened was these glacier waves, they transport this water over hundreds, thousands of miles. And we see it happening in the sea too. They transported material out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. They call them Heinrich events. And so they discharged this water down in the Arizona area of New Mexico. And it sort of ponded there. It was sort of maybe held back by the slope of the land. So you had a huge lake there. But you had a small, let's say you had a small place where it could drain out, where the Colorado River empties currently. And that would have started cutting a gorge. And over millions of years, because this is not just one event, the Noah's flood sort of thing is something that happens again and again and again. And we've had like at least a dozen big ones during the Ice Age, maybe more. So this is the result of what happens over a million years of these things. And the Colorado River just happens to follow the course through there currently, but it didn't cut this. And this is the time of the Neanderthal extinction. And at that time, you had an increase of solar activity because the carbon-14 went way up at that time. And you had a polar reversal, a geomagnetic reversal called the Lechamp here, you see it, and here. And the extinction of Neanderthal occurred right during this period. And they found that the Earth's magnetic field was like only 5% of its current intensity. So any cosmic rays from the sun or the galactic center would have penetrated and have been lethal.
And the geomagnetic field is pretty low right now too.
Oh, and nowhere near that. You know, we're still up about above 80%.
Okay. Good to know.
The way these reversals happen, the cosmic rays, let's say from the sun or galactic center, they get caught in the Earth's belts, radiation belts, and they circle around the pole. The electrons go this way and the protons that way. And this is based on current theory. And this generates a magnetic field. This is like an electric current. In fact, it generates a magnetic field, which is opposed to the Earth's field. So if this gets big enough, if the current gets big enough, there's enough cosmic rays injected, it will actually cancel out the Earth's magnetic field and cause it to wander. The pole will, and it can actually flip it. And this is discussed in my book too. I'm the first to propose this theory, and some other scientists later came out and proposed something similar. And this is just a record of some smaller events we've had. There was one at 775 AD, a beryllium-10 spike, lasted less than a year. And you see, you might have had the droughts. I mean, this definitely, if it happens, it's going to affect vegetation, crops, like the Tambora explosion. After that volcanic explosion, it dimmed the atmosphere, and there were crop failures. It was like it was snowing in New York in the summer, in July. You know, that was just 200 years ago, basically. And so it helped to stock up food to prepare for something like this. And then there's the prophecy of Bulgarian mystic Petr Denov, who had a vision in 1944. And
2029.
The description of what he says is identical to a superwave. It's incredible. And this is before we knew about superwaves. We didn't even know much about, just that same year, the guy that discovered the first exploding galaxy published his paper, 44. And he talks about this wave of fire coming and affecting the whole galaxy. All the planet, star systems will be affected. And he calls it that the Earth will be swept by extraordinary rapid waves of cosmic electricity, is the way he explained it. So it's a way of saying cosmic rays. So these are what you could expect. The gravity wave would be first, and 2 days later, maybe high energy cosmic rays begin arriving. You'd see this blue star apparition in the sky, like the Hope he's talking about.
Kachina, yeah.
And interstellar hydrogen gas would be penetrating and driven by the cosmic ray wind. Then So you get the solar system be immersed in negatively charged particles, which might be healthy to have a lot of negative ions.
Yeah, I get a lot of negative ions. Yeah.
But it could affect the gravity potential. This gets a little far out into alternative physics.
Oh, yeah. Philadelphia experiment. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to get into the idea of electrogravitics, that there's a connection between electricity and gravitation. And if you have solar system, because we're normally in the gravity potential well of the galactic center. From the nucleus of the galaxy, we're still affected more by that than by the sun. And if suddenly, all of a sudden we have anti-gravitic particles, basically, because negatively charged particles are anti-gravitic, rather than, they create gravity hills rather than gravity wells. Those telemarketing. Yeah. It would change the ambient gravity potential, and that could cause some Philadelphia-like effects. Because some people, they talk about, I don't know if this will ever happen, but they talk about people becoming transparent and so on. So then if it goes for several months, like I said, it takes, could cause climatic effects. And then this whole idea of human ascension. If you look in the Bible, all the talk about the coming of the Son of Man and so on, it's connected with catastrophic events.
Yeah, yeah.
And I sort of wonder, could that be that we're going to go into a higher state of consciousness at that time? Because look what happened during 9/11. You know, people were all focused on their TV sets for 3 days. I know I felt different during that period. And they found in the Princeton study, they found it affected the probability, that there was a non-random probability in the random number generators that they had around the Earth. So imagine something like a superwave where the whole world now is looking in the sky and they're seeing these strange things happening and they're fearful and they start praying. So maybe that would be the first time ever that so many people are focused together and are praying. And maybe we would create a sort of Maslowian peak experience for humanity, hopefully to the positive. And that we go into a new higher state of consciousness, sort of create a super soul, sort of a collective state of mind that changes everyone, you know, if you can imagine that. And maybe we'd even be in a state where we could telekinetically deflect the superwave. Because they say, you know, our powers are beyond imagination.
Right.
If we all get together.
I've thought about that, actually, even getting people together. I mean, it would have to be a lot of people. I'm thinking, oh, we'd have to get, you know, at least 1 billion people together to do this prior to whatever.
You would have at this time.
But yeah.
And there would be no communication. So there would all be spontaneous.
Yeah, right. Unless we do it ahead of time.
Then there's a possibility we'd have UFO landings and ET intervention at that time. So I've run out of time, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
did you have some questions? If you want to go, I have stuff on the pulsar thing and so on, but not really much time for that.
So what can we do to prepare?
Yeah, well, you know, it depends on the size of the event. Like we have, you know, I would say at least keep a few months supply of food and water and gasoline to run a generator. You might not have power. Would the government have any program in place? I mean, I can't believe that the government, at least the military, at classified levels, they don't know something's going to happen. Because there's been some whistleblowers from black projects that claimed that we'd sent out a spaceship and detect this wave of particles coming towards us. And so they know the time it's going to arrive. So with foreknowledge like that, maybe that's the purpose of all these tunnels they built. They're like fallout shelters. Like, for example, the Texas Super Collider. That project was mysteriously stopped after they had dug the tunnel. It's several miles of tunnels in a ring underground. And it's said that that's now outfitted as with rooms and facilities, all sorts of facilities for holding people. So whether it be a prison or a place of refuge in the case of a catastrophe, who knows? But there's many tunnels, as you heard about, all over the world.
Yeah.
Ancients had dug tunnels.
Ancients, I was going to say, yes.
They were actually living underground.
And
then if you believe in Lemuria, in the underground, or Shambhala, that there might be underground civilization that could explain, why maybe people go underground. Maybe that way they survive all the future superwaves too. They just live all the time underground.
Interesting.
But look, not much you could do. Pray,
Yeah, right.
Try to head for cover. And
what would be our very first indication that it's coming?
Yeah, with a gravity wave.
What would that
be
appear to us?
Seismic events, and so it makes you wonder about these volcanic eruptions and so on that are occurring all over the world.
Yeah.
Every now and then this happens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's unusual now versus other times, but it makes you get a little worried. Maybe some gravitational potential thing is changing ahead of a superwave.
Okay, well, that's enough for all of us to start preparing now, just to get some extra food, maybe a generator.
Yeah, well, this is not the time because the shelves are going bare already, at least in the US. At least some of these stores like Walmart's.
Well, we got to be more self-sufficient, I guess, and that's what it's telling us.
Well, I hope he manages to get this out. Walt Jenkins has a engine that runs on water, and I hope he gets that out by the end of the year, so that starts to get manufactured. If you had something that ran on water, you could even generate oxygen if you needed oxygen.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for all of that information. It's incredible. It kind of fits with a lot of the other theories, and like you said, we'll all pray, and hopefully, I do study astrology too, and they're saying that a lot of us are going to start waking up soon. So hopefully that happens, and we can all work together and avoid what we think might be coming.
Yeah, more information is on my websites.
Okay, so that's starburstfound.org and etheric.com. Are they both .coms?
No, one is .org.
.org. I had it right.
.com.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, thank you, Dr. LaViolette. I really appreciate your time and all the work that you've done to help humanity.
Oh, thank you. It's my duty, my duty to God. Yeah.
And to all. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you to all of my viewers. Make sure that you tune in all the time to Envisioning a New Earth. And take care, everyone.